Hi, welcome. My name is Liz Ndoye, and we are about to start the next in the Art at Home series lessons for the Hoboken Public Library. For the month of September, we have been focusing on artists who are Latino or Latina American. Last week we looked at the work of Raul de Nieves. This week we are going to focus on the artwork of Carmen Argote. Carmen Argote was born in 1981. She was born in Guadalajara. So she's also a Mexican-American artist. She now lives in Los Angeles, lives and works in Los Angeles, and she is known for her performance art and sculpture. Her work has been included in exhibitions and museum collections, including the Hammer Museum, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, Denver Art Museum, Orange County Museum of Art, and the National Museum of Mexican Art. She was a recipient of the Artadia Award in 2019, the Rima Hort Mann Foundation Yo-Yo-Yo Grant in 2015, and a California Community Foundation Emerging Artist Grant in 2013. In 2016, the LA Weekly named Argote their best up-and-coming artist. She has since been in the Whitney Biennial of American Art, and she's becoming more and more famous every day. She's young, she's cutting edge, she's up and coming. Her work we could classify as conceptual art. It is more about the idea and the thought process behind it than it is the actual finished piece. Although she does create finished works of art that are very precious to her and that she enjoys exhibiting. Because she was born in another country and culture, the immigrant experience is fundamental to her work. The concept of home is also incredibly important to her. When she was growing up, her father maintained a home in Mexico as well as in Los Angeles, and the idea of where she belonged and where her home and hearth were was kind of a confusing and divided idea in her young mind. This conflicting or dual role or dual idea of home has heavily influenced her adult work. And you'll see that when we, in a few moments, look at the work that she has created. Her work is very deep. The concepts are very involved, and I will do my best to explain to her what I believe she was trying to achieve. Again, the idea of home is incredibly important to her. The whole concept of nostalgia and memory and things that you might find in any given place and how they trigger memories are extremely important to her. So the way an object might look, the mark it might make knowingly or unknowingly, the smell of an object might trigger memories. And all of these avenues of thought play a huge role in her work. Now I'd like to show you some of the images of her work. Then I'm going to talk about the art project that you can make, because that is the whole idea behind the Hoboken Library's Art at Home series of classes. We know that you are, for the most part, sheltering at home during the time of COVID-19. Art is a brilliant way to help you relieve stress, get over loneliness and boredom, and really delve into your own personal creativity in the many hours where you're forced to stay in one place. So here we go. We are about to look at the work of Carmen Argote, new, young, up-and-coming Latina American artist. Argote's family moved to Los Angeles, California from Guadalajara, Mexico when she was 5 years old. She attended community college near her home, where she took her first art class and soon realized that art was what she wanted to pursue. The reason for her exploration of the notion of home came about after her father decided to return to Mexico when she was 17 in order to build a home for his family. So there were 2 homes, as I mentioned earlier, and this experience led to Argote's ongoing artwork called If Only It Were That Easy, started in 2018. Argote then attended the University of California, Los Angeles, where she received her BA in 2004 and her MFA in 2007. She was an artist in residence at the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture in Maine during 2009. So this piece that we're looking at now, Argote calls a painting. She actually made this piece painting with avocado. I'm not quite sure how she created it, whether she mashed the avocado and applied it to the fabric with a brush, or she actually peeled the avocado and held it in her hand and pressed the whole fruit to make the marks on the canvas. But I quite love it. I love the activity and the action in the painting. I love this unexpected square at the top of the image where it appears the marks are overflowing or cascading away from the square, and then how the marks go right off to the edges of the paper on all sides of the image. Because it's a computer image, we're not seeing the true color. It appears to be red and orange, brown, and black, but I have a feeling in actual life it may be very different colors indeed. I like the circular composition, the way everything flows out, like I said, from the square at the top. It's a really dynamic piece of art. I'm guessing that she used avocado to refer back to her home in Mexico, her other home in Mexico, since avocado is a major item of food in Mexico. Growing up in 2 countries created a mixed identity for Argote. Her art allowed her to incorporate her notions of home from Mexico into those of the United States by using reminders of her home in Guadalajara, such as paintings, textiles, and photographs. Her artwork combines the home and the immigrant experience through the use of personal objects. Her artwork often revolves around Los Angeles. Her art focuses on combining architecture with the personal and using her surroundings to tell her story. She explains her immigrant experience and how those surroundings create a sense of belonging and a notion of home. She demonstrates her personal stories and works with others to create a larger vision. So when we look at this particular painting, this too is all about marks and impressions that things leave behind them. Argote frequently marvels at the stains and the imprint that objects leave behind. Objects, for example, that sit in a particular place for a prolonged period of time always leave a mark behind. A shadow, a stain, some kind of record is always left behind, even when the object is removed. So this painting represents that. The way she applied the shapes and colors to the canvas was by taking objects and imprinting them on the canvas itself. Love, love, love the colors in this one. She uses a lot of reds and oranges and grays, colors that I consider to be part of the earth tone family, and they're my personal favorite. Again, on top she has this square that seems to be counter to all the activity that's going on around it. And for me, it anchors the entire composition and creates for a very interesting visual effect. I love this piece. Argote was commissioned to create public art for the Metro Expo Line station at 17th and Colorado Avenue in Santa Monica. She used materials that range from fiberglass to coffee pots or manta rays to produce photographs, sculptures, and exhibits. Argote forms connections among our surroundings to expand beyond the individual, to explore how we inhabit these spaces. These distinct landscapes create stories and narratives either from the past or present that can be felt through the body. So this particular piece is about her father. You can see that there is a great deal of fabric that looks like it comes from ties, which I'm assuming is a reference to him. And then the photograph in the middle is a reminder of her father as well. I like the explosive quality of this piece. In fact, a lot of her work has this really energetic feel to it, and I'm really drawn to that quality in her work. But you can see she's attaching three-dimensional things like fabric to the flat background piece, and that is quite wonderful. This kind of collaging with actual real three-dimensional objects is very exciting. Here we see Argote standing on one of the pieces from one of her major works called Filtration System for a Process-Based Practice. The materials featured in this exhibition include linen, fiberglass, cotton, rope, and unique articles. Her inspiration came from Lincoln Park near the neighborhood she grew up in. She used to go there to reflect and consider the inequalities that exist nearby. The work is 5 feet tall, and Argote designed it after a mound in Lincoln Park Lake. Argote used the tall piece as an island in her studio and located a cover underneath where paint drips would fall. She painted the mound with a variety of colors that reminded her of her visits to the park. The cover in the end was used to cover the piece to symbolize the mound at the lake that covered what was underneath. I love this piece. I love the enormity of it, the monumentality of it. I love that she recognized the fact that her drips were as beautiful as whatever piece it was that she was working on. And again, it's in the earth tone colors that I really like so much. It's part of her concept of the process of making art being more important than the finished object, and the marks that things leave behind them that evoke memory and nostalgic thoughts. So it really combines all of her ideas into this major piece. Argote creates installations with fabric, curtains, objects that she took from her own childhood home that she installs in place to create a feeling of home, an essence of home. being surrounded by the whole idea of home that she remembers. And this piece evokes that, because this one is made from curtains and other fabrics that she had in her childhood home. I think some of it is material that she actually took off a sofa. That's why some parts of it are open and seem to be missing, but it's just that they were never there. I have never seen her work in person, but it must be a great deal of fun to walk in and out of her installation art. Now we're in the portion of the lesson where I'm going to talk to you about an art project that you could do inspired by Argote and the type of work that she does. Our focus in this project will be the whole idea of house and home and things within your own living space that you can use in a variety of ways. We're going to create a collage that is made from rubbings, and the rubbings that I'm going to show to you that I made today were made from things I found right here where I live. And I'm even going to demonstrate for you how to do that kind of rubbing. Now I'm going to show you the materials that you need. I used a lot of paper for this project, and it's just really cheap Xerox paper, photocopy paper. Just the kind of paper you get for your printer or photocopy machine. You'll need just a simple school glue stick. A pencil or marker would be helpful. Definitely going to need scissors, and you will need crayons or oil pastels. Again, the whole idea behind the piece that I created was home. And I painted my background first. I find that when I do collage, and by the way, collage is simply the art of cutting and gluing down pieces of paper, but I find when I do any kind of collage that it's helpful to have a painted-in background to work on top of. It helps to pull all the small pieces of cut paper together and unify them. Whereas if you left the background white, there would be a lot of gaps, and what you glued down would not relate well to each other. The pieces that you glued down would not relate well to each other. So after I painted the background on my paper, I started creating rubbings. The way to do rubbings is so simple. You just take paper and find an object, and there are probably millions of them where you are living around you. Find an object that has a lot of texture. I'm going to move over here to the wall behind me to demonstrate how you can do rubbing. So the wall here is brick. Unfortunately, there's this pipe here. And I'm laying the paper on top of the brick and rubbing. I'm using a crayon, and I'm rubbing over the paper, and I hope you can see that it's actually creating the texture of the bricks underneath. You can rub on the wood on your floor or the tiles on your floor. You can I don't know, find an old shell laying around in your house and rub on that. A piece of wire netting, you know, those bags that potatoes and onions come in the supermarket. You could cut one of those, lay it flat, put the paper on top of it, and then rub with crayon on top of the paper. I varied the different textures that I created, as well as the colors that I used. And I had a lot of fun doing the rubbings. I made a whole pile of rubbings in different colors, and I suggest and recommend that you do that before you start the next step in the process for making our collage. Because the more rubbings you create, the more choices you will have and the more variety you'll be able to use in your finished collage and work of art. Now I'm going to put up on the easel a piece that I started off camera. It is a work in process, and I'm going to talk to you about the steps that I took to make this work of art, so that when you start doing and creating on your own, you'll know the steps that you can take. Let's clip it on. Even though there is color in this piece, I decided to keep my colors in the earth tone family. That seemed to fit with what Carmen Argote does in her own work, and they are also my favorite colors, as I believe I said before. My method, again, I painted the background, and I like outlining and framing my pieces, so I made a broad black outline around the background before I started. Artists like to frame and create outlines because it enables us to plan ahead and control the amount of area that we're going to cover when we work. So the background color I used was red ochre, this brownish red color. And I then took a white crayon and drew the shape of a house. And I'm going to go over the lines to make it easier for you to see. I drew a very simple house shape. Because in keeping with Carmen Argote, I'm thinking about ideas of what the home is and means. Another interesting point is that we often associate the home with women, and we think about parts of the female anatomy as kind of parts of a home too. So I don't know if Argote thought about that as well while she was doing her work. After I drew the outline of the house, then I looked through my pile of texture and I started choosing pieces that I thought would work in certain areas of the house drawing. So for example, in the roof tiles here, I used this red texture. I created this texture, I rubbed over an old piece of lawn furniture that I had on my deck, a metal tabletop. And I decided that triangles kind of fit the shape of the roof, and I began cutting them out and gluing them down. I hope you can see that I also left some of the background color showing through, because I feel that creates a more active and dynamic movement here in these smaller shapes, and it pulls them all together. I used more different textured pieces in different colors for things like this small window here. This is a mirror on this wall here. A piece of carpeting here. The floorboards down here. I think this might be a painting over here on this wall, and I actually cut out a chair over here. I made a tree using different pieces of texture. Now, one technique that will be helpful for you, you can't draw in pencil on top of crayon. So what I did in order to make my shapes was to draw in pencil on the back of the paper. That enabled me to actually be able to. I'll show you again. If you have your texture, you want to flip it over to the back and draw on the back in order to make your shapes. I'm going to make a little figure, and I'm drawing it in pencil on the back of my piece of texture, and then it's so much easier to cut out. You can try drawing on the front, but trying to draw with pencil or even marker on top of wax crayon is very, very frustrating. I wouldn't recommend it. But it's always good to try and experiment. You may find a way to do it and do it better than I. Art is almost like science. You try new things and who knows? I mean, Carmen Argote even took things like protein bars and left them unwrapped on paper for days on end, and then she removed them from the paper and found that they made beautiful marks on the paper, and she created a whole edition of prints from stains that she made with protein bars. Must have got expensive after a while to make. Unless perhaps she ate what she made, who knows. This is what I love about new young innovators. They do things that we people who aren't full-time professional artists would never even think of. And the fact that they think these new things up is what makes for fine art. It's whatever they think of that no one has ever done before. That is what makes their art so unique and remarkable. All right, so my little person is cut out. And here's another tip. Before you glue your shapes on to your image, you want to play around with where they go. So before gluing, move it around, try and see where you think it might work best. Do I want my person flying in the sky? Why not? Do I want my person standing in front of a painting? Do I want my person looking into the mirror over here? And once you've made the decision about where the paper is going to go, the shape is going to go, you want to turn it over on the back and apply your glue. I have discovered with this cheap photocopy paper, you might need more glue than usual. Elmer's glue sticks really are the easiest to use with this kind of work, I believe. But there's all different kinds of glues out there. Use them all until you find the one that you like best. All right, mine is a work in process. There's a lot more that I'd like to do on it, but rather than take up your time for creating and working, I would like to once again thank the Hoboken Public Library for sponsoring our Art at Home classes. I was thrilled to be with you during this lesson. I look forward to seeing you next week. We will be looking at another Latino or Latina American artist celebrating the great diversity in the American art scene today. If you want to see past lessons, please visit hobokenlibrary.org and you will find our YouTube videos there. Again, it's been a pleasure. Art on. Have fun, everyone, with your own creative work and enjoy. Stay safe and healthy. Until next time. Bye-bye.